Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and Assalamu alaikum. HR community uses a number of tools, frameworks, and techniques to enhance the workflow, the improvement in the business environment within the organization, and at the same time improving the work life of its employees. In today's program, I'm going to talk about an analysis which HR and people professionals can use in their organization to productively contribute towards the organizational growth and its well-being. So this analysis is called PESTLE analysis. What PESTLE analysis is, it's basically an acronym, and by PESTLE we mean one, which is P, which is political, E, economical, S, sociological, T, technological, L is legal, and E is environmental. So there are these six factors which are influencing the business environment within the organization. Now, HR people and of course with their peers into the major stakeholders like CEOs, CEOs, COOs, and the departmental and executive committee can carry out this PESTLE analysis. Now, this is an acronym. We will in a minute come towards the individual definition of all these things, which are pretty obvious. But what PESTLE analysis is anyway? It is a fact-finding opportunity. PESTLE analysis is basically an analysis about the facts. Now, it is not something which an organization, interestingly, it is not something that organization controls. It helps an organization to identify the external factors that could influence the decision made in the organization. So these are all the factors. If you go through these factors again, and we'll go through them one by one, all of these factors are such that are external factors. Organization does not have any control over these factors. Like political factors, the organization does not have any control over these. Like the sociological factors, the economical factors, the legal factors, all these factors are something which are external factors, and organization do not effectively control these minds. Interestingly, these are the factors that are an organization on its own, that an organization on its own cannot affect, or nor can these factors directly affect the profitability of an organization. So this is a very interesting thing, but at the same time, this is an analysis that an organization should do. And as we move on into the presentation, we'll give you as to how this analysis can be conducted in the organization. By understanding these external factors, it is possible to maximize opportunities and minimize the threats to the organization. So, as you are well familiar with the SWOT analysis, which is strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, that's basically also done into the organization. But PESTLE analysis is something which goes very deep and actually pinpoint what are the areas of opportunities and threats to the organization, and how the in a later stage organization can tackle those. Some areas of threats are political instabilities, or economics downturn, or depression, or some technological enhancements. All these are threats and as well as opportunities. Conducting a strategic analysis means scanning the external environment to detect and understand broad and long-term trends that are happening around the organization or into the community or country where the organization is operating. Now, what are these individual things? One is political. What is into the political, that the tax policy of the government, that bringing in environmental regulations, trade restrictions, reforms, tariffs, political stability. So all these things are things which basically not controlled by the organization itself, but they are somehow being imposed in the country or into the area where the organization is working, and one needs to have a good eye on what is happening into these areas, and how the organization is, how the country or the political setup of the organization of the country is bringing forward these new frameworks, new legal documents for the country. The second one is economics, economical area, economic growth, decline, interest rates, exchange rates, inflation, wage rates, minimum wage rates, working hours, unemployment rates, credit availability, cost. All these things are included in the economic side of the analysis. Then there is sociological side, which is cultural norms, expectations, health consciousness, population growth, age distribution, career attitudes, health and safety. So all these measures which are happening within the society where the organization is working, they directly or indirectly impact the working of the organization. The third one is, of course, technology, which is new technologies which are coming into the arena, emerging in the, for example, in the fields of robotics and artificial intelligence. That is very swiftly changing the business scene, and the rate of change itself is increasing. How will this affect the organization, product or services? So all these things can play a very vital role into this analysis, and ultimately into the growth of the organization. Then there are legal frameworks. What is happening in the legal side of the country? Changes into legislation impacting employment, access to materials, quotas, resources, export, import, and taxation. All these things are part of the impacts that are happening over the organization. And the last one is, of course, the environmental damages or environmental changes or the policies that the organization is bringing. Global warming and increased need to switch to sustainable resources, ethical sourcing, both locally and nationally, including supply chain intelligence. So all these six factors are basically not into the control of the organization itself, and on the other hand, they may not necessarily directly impact the profitability of the organization, but indirectly, and all these external factors are impacting the working of the organization. They, over time, they kind of force the organization to change their policies, to change their behaviors towards customers, towards their own stakeholders, towards their pricing, towards their cost of doing the businesses. So all these things are basically under those broader framework where the organizations are working. So once you do this analysis, you under the of course the supervision of the people professionals of the HR, they are basically I'm giving them one more area to work on. If they do this analysis regularly, all these things will be beneficial for the organization in the longer run, as to how a keen eye the organizational heads or the executive committee is having over all these six factors that they themselves don't control, but unfortunately they have to take a very good look on all of these things. How to do the PESTLE analysis? Identify the scope of the research. I mean, if you are doing a research, do a good scope of where your research will be spanning. It should cover present and possible future scenarios, and apply to areas of the world in which the business operates. Decide how the information will be collected and by whom. So whatever the data you are collecting, the information you are collecting, how you are going to collect that. Identify appropriate sources of information. These could be stakeholders looking for people professionals to address specific issues to current policy that require updating. Gather the information. It's useful to use a template as the basis for recording the information. And in the next slides, I will also show you a brief template. Analyze the findings. Identify which of these factors listed above are most important or could cause the issues. All the factors that you have listed into that template. Identify the business specific options to address the issues, and decide what actions need to be taken. So it starts from the basic identification of the research, where what are the areas that you are going to cover, and it ends on an action. So if you are conducting a research, if you are doing a PESTLE analysis, don't just leave it without any actionable item. So at the end of the day, everything that you are conducting, that has to have an action agenda at the end of it. So this is that's very short template. You can make your own template also. This is just an idea as to all the 6 factors listed, external factors to consider into that. Like in politics, you are looking at the kind of political stability, the tax regime. In the legal side, maybe you are looking at what are the cost of operations, what are the minimum wages, what is the quota that you have to have of the different employees in the organization, what are the tax new legalizations that are happening. So all these factors, and then these are the external factors, then how they are impacting the internal factors into the organization, how it is impacting the inside of the organization, one that particular external factor, then importance to other or to the organization. If it is a serious issue to the organization that the organization will be facing in the coming months, or it is a medium range, or it is of not of much concern to the organization. So you can list down, and then once you do a sorting of them, you can at the first you can focus on all the red flags, that this is the main things that the organization needs to take care in the next coming months. Then there are of course advantages and disadvantages of conducting anything. So disadvantages are always there. Some PESTLE analysis users oversimplify the amount of data used for decision. It is easy to use insufficient data. So whenever you are doing some analysis, don't fall to the oversimplification of the data, and don't do the research or analysis on incomplete data. So there is always more data that can be had from different sources. So you should have a complete length and breadth of the data before moving ahead. The risk of capturing too much data may lead to paralysis by analysis. So it is contrary to the first thing, that it shouldn't be too little data and it shouldn't be too much of the data, right? So there should be a balance. So this balance can be achieved from the first meeting or first thing that you are going to conduct with your committee of PESTLE analysis, that what are the areas that you are going to cover, and do a very thorough first meeting of diagnostic, perhaps, that you could list down all the possible areas from where you are going to collect the information and data. The data used may be based on assumptions that later prove to be unfounded. So there may be a risk that there are data which are just based on assumptions, and later on the data is not proving what is actually happening. So you should be very particular about collection of the data. So the pace of change makes it increasingly difficult to anticipate the development that may affect in the organization future. So this is a very one big disadvantage of this thing also, that currently, as you have seen, that there is COVID and there is political instability and there are some threats into the international arena, and there are economic downturns and sometimes depressions into the economy, and all these things are changing so fastly. The technological changes are happening so fastly that it is difficult to predict what will be happening in the next 6 months or 1 year or 2 years down the line. So this is a disadvantage of carrying out this analysis. To be effective, the process needs to be repeated on regular basis. Now, there is another disadvantage of this, that if you have just done it for once in 2 years, or just once in a year, this analysis, you should be settling for a regular frequency of this analysis. It should be done maybe quarterly or 6 monthly, or if you are short in time, it just once a year, but not more than that. Once a year, it should be conducted, a PESTLE analysis, maybe at the start of the financial year or the calendar year, that you conduct a PESTLE analysis through the team, which is a kind of expert one, which has a good political view or political understanding within the team. The person who is good economic background or good economic understanding, the person who has good sociological background and understanding, the person with good technological background and a legal background and environmental background. background. So there can be 6 people who have their expertise or maybe studies in their past, or maybe assigned that they could be looking into this, but pick and choose those 6 particular people who are uh, very familiar with that area. For example, someone who is picking the economics, so he should be familiar with the GDP ratios, with the inflation, with how the State Bank of Pakistan is working, with how the credit facilities of the banks are happening. So he should be that kind of person who knows all these things. So everyone who is being selected into the team should be having a good knowledge or expertise into that area. So these are disadvantages, but at the same time there are advantages also. It's a simple framework. It facilitates an understanding of the wider business environment. It encourages the development of external and strategic thinking. It can enable an organization to anticipate future business threats and take action to avoid or minimize their impact. It can enable an organization to spot business opportunities and exploit them fully. So this is a quick presentation on PESTLE analysis, and as I said in the said that this analysis, this is just a mode of conducting your analysis within the organization. It is a tool within the HR professionals to enhance their organizational's profitability, their value, and the long-term sustainability of the organization. So the takeaway from this is that one, this PESTLE analysis is based on those things which an organization do not control. These are the things which are externally imposed onto the organization. So organization needs to take care of all those things also, which they do not control, but they influence them externally. And second, this PESTLE analysis should not be a one-time exercise. It should be continued into a regular stream into the organization. And third, very important thing, that all the areas within the PESTLE analysis, like political, economical, sociological, legal, technological, environmental, all these things should be handed over within the team to someone who is expert in that, so that he or she could bring that expert opinion or expert analysis and data towards the bigger team. So thank you very much for your time, and if you have any questions, if you have any comments, you can write us on our social media. Thank you very much, and